can hear you now.
Conference will now be recorded.
Sorry about that. We just had a little technical difficulties. So let's jump right in it, right back in it. Welcome everybody to the Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 meeting of the Monterey Select Board here in Town Hall, lovely downtown Monterey. I am Stephen Weiss, the chair.
Justin Maycook, present.
Justin and I are present here at Town Hall. Is nope, another day of boycott. Okay, so let's just jump right into what we have. Item number. Okay, so we're just going to jump into new business since there seems not to be any old business. The board has received a letter, an email from the investigator who's currently doing the investigation. And if you don't mind, it's very short. I'd like to read the minutes. Justin, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, dear select board members, I'm writing to update you on it was business dated January 12th, 2022. And it's by Corinne Green from Green and Tapper. Dear select board members, I am writing to update you on the status of the investigation. Shelley and I have spent numerous hours interviewing the individuals involved in the complaints and reviewing additional documents. As of this date, our current chargeable time is approximately $8,000. We have a few people to speak with and have to draft the report. I expect we will need an additional $6,000 to $7,000 to finish this investigation. Alternatively, we can draft a basic report based on the information currently gathered at the lower cost of $2,500 to $3,000. However, this option would provide only our factual findings, since we do not have enough information at this time to make conclusions and recommendations. Please advise us how you would like to proceed. Thank you, Corinne. So this was my concern when we hired these people, because I think you mentioned that they were charging double what the other investigators were offering, and if you charge double and you have a fixed amount of money, you actually get half the amount of service. I wish that this when we get a letter like this from attorney, at least what I have, it's accompanied by a kind of a breakdown of where the money went. I would like to see that, to know exactly how they're doing this. My concern is that I can only speak about my own interview, but there were two attorneys on the interview, both the principal and the assistant, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the understanding it was either going to be one or the other. So I can understand how that amount of money could be eaten up if you have two attorneys on there. But again, that was just mine. Maybe because I'm so important.
I had two as well for 4 hours and 15 minutes.
You had two as well?
Yep.
So I'd like a breakdown. What I would move would be, if the board's okay with it, is to respond to them and ask them for a breakdown of how that $8,000 was spent. Obviously, they're not going to provide, details of the investigation, but, talk to X number of persons, talk to this person for X number of hours, talk to this person for X number of hours.
They have the billable hours. They have it. I'm sure they have it. They just didn't provide it.
Right. I'd like to see it. And I'm curious as to who they still haven't spoken to. Have they? I don't know. Obviously, we don't get, and we're not supposed to get, kind of an ongoing list of the people, when they investigate, when they talk to them. But is it 3 people left? Are there 5 people left? Are there 10 people left? What is the, I don't know, because I think, I don't know. And the items over here are kind of generalized, and I think we owe it to the taxpayers to at least get a specific amount. Plus, I would think that the finance committee, but we'll have to talk to them, because if we run out of the $11,000 and we ask for additional funds, it's going to have to be approved by the finance committee. And the first thing that they're going to ask, I would believe, would be like, show us what it's being spent on. So, anyway, so those are the 2 reasons why I'd like a breakdown. What do you think?
I think that it would make the most sense to simultaneously ask for a cost breakdown and request additional funds from the finance committee in the amount of $6,000.
I think it'd be good too, to not only ask them to break down the already spent billable hours, but to give you a projection of the, because I'm wondering if it's not new people, but re-interviews, because, right, sometimes something comes up in one interview and you need to go back to somebody, but it would be good to know how many additional interviews are they talking with new people or with, like, second interviews with somebody. Yeah, because then it'll be a better case for the backup, but still, he's right, ask for the money and tell them you're asking for those things when you do.
Well, I'd like to find out how they're spending the money first, quite frankly. I mean, think about it. If you read this email again, it's pretty vague. If I was going to have somebody work for me, I don't know what, build a Porsche or service my car, and if they came in and said, well, I don't know, it's just, it's going to probably cost another $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, I'd ask, well, show me what you need it for, and I got no problem spending it, but I think that we have to at least ask, how did you spend the other amount, and what are your projections? How are you basing it on? The difference between, if the request right now is between $6,000 and $7,000.
Did she say she needs $6,000 or $7,000, or it'll take $6,000 or $7,000 on top of the 8?
So it's $6,000 or $7,000 additional dollars on top of the 8.
8, not 18?
So
I'm sorry, to 8.
it's really only asking
So
for
it's either
4 to 5
So
more.
it's either going to be So according to this, from what I could
Yes.
gather here, it'll be
14 or 15.
or $15,000.
Yes.
Okay. So the town has townspeople have approved $11,000, so it's really an additional $4,000. What?
They approved 10.
They approved 10? Okay. So it's
Maybe you threw in an extra 1,000 and we didn't know.
we found another 1,000 laying around over here.
I have drafted an electronic mail response, and I would read it and then see if it responds to our questions, and see, I would move that we send the email or send it as edited, but shall I read it?
Sure.
Dear Corinne, I'm reaching out to you on behalf of the Monterey Select. The Select Board is requesting a breakdown of current and future costs, i.e. interviews, writing a report, etc., from Green and Hafer. We have sent a request for additional funds to the Finance Committee for the amount of $4,000, which would bring our total budget for the investigation to $14,000. We will likely hear back next Tuesday as to whether the request is approved, and we will update you then. Thank you for your patience. Sincerely, the Monterey Select Board.
Okay. So you're saying that you're going to that, that we're gonna give them the lower amount of the two amounts that they're asking for.
Why would, I guess there is some, is the additional $6,000 to $7,000 based on 8,000 or 10,000?
That's what, but it's, look, the way it's written, it's based on the 8,000.
Yes,
Right.
and so that's why I'm asking for the 4, or why
Yeah.
I would say we've asked the finance committee for the 4. And
Can you say, sort of like, well, we will ask for the money anyway, but we wanna know it, we're not gonna release it unless we have a satisfactory answer. Somehow,
Yeah.
not all of those words, but just somehow twisted a little bit.
Well,
so
the thing is this,
We need a
I
finished product.
just wanna.
We want a roof on the house, not a, you know.
I mean, I don't know how you're gonna put it in your email, but I mean, I'm not, I mean, I wanna see this breakdown. I mean, I don't want them to think that we're gonna give you we're gonna give you $14,000, oh, and by the way, I mean, and we're still waiting for the breakdown. So I mean, I think this is very important.
how about we will disperse these additional funds to you on the basis,
If approved,
if
if
approved, after receipt of a cost breakdown?
of it, right.
You might also wanna tweak it to make it clear you need the cost breakdown, because the finance committee isn't gonna
Right.
approve it unless they see that. So,
You may
put,
want to
you know,
put that.
tweak it so that it's clear you need to get that ASAP, so you can get it to them, so that when they meet, they can look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and put a little bit of the bad on the finance committee, not on you, because they don't know the finance committee.
When is the finance committee meeting next?
Tuesday.
Somebody's gotta be the bad guy.
But I guarantee you, they have this.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
And they better, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay, of course.
Anybody in the audience have any, comments? No? Tom, I thought you'd be all over this. Do you hear me?
Shh, we can't.
He had his hand up before.
Oh.
For the. So I can reread it.
Sure.
And I tried to add the into the Dear Corinne, I'm reaching out to you on behalf of the Monterey Select Board. The Select Board is requesting a breakdown of current and future costs, i.e. interviews, writing report, etc., from Green and Hafer. We have sent a request for additional funds to the Finance Committee for the amount of $4,000, which would bring our total budget for the investigation to $14,000. This should hopefully satisfy the request for the written report. We will likely hear back next Tuesday as to whether the request is approved, and we will update you then. We will disperse these additional funds to you pending the receipt of a cost breakdown. The cost breakdown will help the Finance Committee consider the request.
And you can put, finance committee will, I mean, the cost breakdown that, will help the select board and the finance committee,
That's
really what it is.
I also feel like there's not enough urgency in there. Basically, you need them to get that breakdown to you by Monday AM, because the finance committee's got, like, you want time to turn it around. So there needs to be a sense of, like, please forward this
Urgency.
no later than, I pick a number, that close the business Monday, close business tomorrow, so that we can consider it and forward it to finance committee.
How about when it says we will likely hear back next Tuesday, in parentheses, as long as we can get the cost breakdown by Monday or something?
Yeah.
Do you guys need to meet, like, sooner than next Wednesday, so, I mean, before the finance committee?
No, let's just let the finance committee do the review. We're gonna meet on Wednesday, the following Wednesday. We can do it in reverse order. It's perfectly fine. Particularly if they turn it down. So we can have this conversation. All right, so,
Can I read it one more
yeah,
time?
read it one more time and read it and make it as a motion.
I motion to send the following electronic mail to Corinne, CCing the other two members of the select board. Dear Corinne, I'm reaching out to you on behalf of the Monterey Select Board. The select board is requesting a breakdown of current and future costs, i.e. interviews, writing report, etc. from Green and Hayford. We have sent a request for additional funds to the finance committee for the amount of $4,000, which would bring our total budget for the investigation to $14,000. This should hopefully satisfy the request for the additional $6,000 for the written report. We will likely hear back next Tuesday, as long as we can receive the cost breakdown by Monday, as to whether the request is approved, and we will update you then. We will disperse these additional funds to you pending the receipt of a cost breakdown. The cost breakdown will help the select board and the finance committee to consider the request. Thanks for your patience. Sincerely, the Monterey Select Board.
And the only thing that I would, and not adding anything to your text though, should a copy of this also go to the chair of the finance committee?
Well, I was gonna say, if you can print it off for me, Justin, I will include that in her original email with the reserve fund transfer.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so that's a motion to approve that. I second that motion. So yes?
Yes.
Good.
And should we do a motion for a reserve request for transfer of funds from the reserve fund? I know it's only,
I'm gonna sign that on Wednesday when I get their breakdown. I'm not gonna, I wanna see if they, you know, I don't wanna sign it and then have them not send a breakdown and, whatever.
but then the finance committee can't consider the request on Tuesday. Even if the cost breakdown is
Right.
received.
But we can put on here, reason for a request, see attached emails, and it's contingent upon.
As long as it's on there, that's contingent upon receipt of the approved breakdown.
Contingent of approval of the
Listen, The
breakdown.
thing is this, I'm not trying to be difficult over here, we are talking about taxpayer money, and while sometimes I can appear cavalier about things, the one thing that I'm not cavalier about is the use of taxpayer money, because we have to use it wisely.
I agree with you. I think, we took it to special town meeting and we requested a certain amount of money, and things have changed and we're requesting more money. And ultimately, it's up to the finance committee to, we need to be careful of taxpayer money, and they have the ultimate decision whether or not they wanna spend taxpayer money. But I think we should make the request in the amount of $4,000. And, the finance committee can see the email that we just sent saying that it's pending, based on the receipt of the cost breakdown.
Steve, what happens, let's say you get the breakdown, you report it to the finance committee, they say yes, but you look at the breakdown and you're not happy with it. You don't have, even if they've approved the transfer of money, you don't have to take the money if you're not happy with it, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
So you can still turn it down. So what's the downside of letting them do it first? I totally, by the way, I totally respect that you wanna look at that breakdown, I don't blame you. I'm just trying to figure out how to make the timing work. As long as you still can say thumbs down, even if they say thumbs up, is it okay?
You're talking about the difference of a day, because quite frankly, if I don't approve it today, but I approve it next Wednesday, it's not gonna get approved until next Tuesday from the finance committee. So you're talking about a 24-hour, the only difference is 24 hours, and yet the board still maintains a modicum of control
It would be a week, Steve,
That's the thing. It would be
because
a
they
week,
meet
right.
Tuesday. If you don't approve it till Wednesday to give them reserve fund transfer, they wouldn't get it till the following Tuesday.
That.
Which would be the,
Okay, so I will approve it for that.
I would motion to make that reserve fund request of the finance committee.
Sure, there's only one spot for me to sign. I sign that. I see how this works.
You
So you
can
don't
still
want me to
turn it
chair?
down, even if they say yes, that's why I asked, even if
I
they say
understand
yes,
that.
you can still
I'm
say
gonna-
no if you don't like the numbers.
If they send me something crazy, I'm gonna go into Melissa's office and
I don't like
I'm gonna tear it up. Okay, so let's continue, shall we? Town administrator items, firefighter safety grant award.
yes, so we were successful in writing a grant, for the firefighter safety equipment grant, in the amount of $10,500, which is gonna allow the fire company to get an up-to-date, repeater for the radios and as well as, the radios that meet the new megahertz, radio transmission.
Okay, so you wrote that grant?
Yep.
And we got
Yes,
in full.
yes, and full.
Terrific. Congratulations. Good job, Melissa. Transfer station attendant rate increase request.
Yes, so Bill, the guy that is covering up there, is requesting to be paid what, Beth was paid when she left, which was $20.55 an hour. He's currently only being paid $18.36 because he only was, sporadically covering, but now he's working.
Is he working the same hours that Beth was working?
Yes.
So I think that's fair. I think, so I would make a motion that we increase Bill's rate to match Beth's rate as long as he's working the same hours.
Second.
I vote yes.
Yes.
You had asked me to get the number for, what the average number of voters were for possible consideration of, electronic voting, and the average number that show up is 83.
Is that town meeting or for like?
Town and special. The largest one was 151 in 2015. And the next largest was 136 in 2016, but it's gone down since then. With the largest being 108 in 2021. So just when you take into consideration if we're gonna do the electronic voting and how many clickers you would wanna buy or lease, the average is 83.
I mean, I would assume the lease company would probably, say, well, we'll give you up to 150 or up to 200 for lease company. Buying it, again, I'm personally not. I don't think buying is such a great idea because the technology changes all the time. I mean, unless somebody were to give us a really great deal on 1974 era clicker. But I don't think it's gonna happen. So the next step would be to find a company that's going to.
Right, so you guys meet, the next step is to tell me how many you want me to get a price for, how many clickers, so that I can get a more accurate.
I think 150, 175, or 200 would probably be. You don't want to have too few.
Right.
Right.
Has there ever been 150 people?
Just at the
2015.
special town meeting in May of 2015, there was 151.
That one person without a clicker. Probably Nikki.
I knocked some old man over and get it, Greg is.
Okay, so I'll get back to you with more
Okay.
information.
I won't
Yeah.
name any names.
Why don't, for the sake of getting an estimate, why don't we just go with 175?
If they break it down that way.
Sure.
The next thing is Galley. They have a monthly Terminix guy that comes there and sprays and stuff. He has recommended that there is an extensive infestation in the basement, and they'd like to seal all the entry points, as well as the interior and exterior at a cost of $1,050. If you are in agreement with that, Jim said it would be worthwhile. I just need you to approve an increase in the spending limit again by $1,050. And I also have to go to the finance committee and request that they,
So remind me again, Galley, that is the revolving fund?
it is, but the spending limit that was approved at town meeting was only $1,500. Because it's usually for the water and the monthly, but you've had the two unexpected.
We can increase the spending limit without
Yes.
going to town meeting?
Yes, the select board and the finance committee have to both approve it.
I would approve increasing the spending limit. Galley for that.
Second,
I vote yes.
yes.
Is that nice?
Nice.
You just said administration meeting, so.
I'm sorry, mice.
Oh, yeah. But I hope it's nice.
I assume, but you can't assume.
That's true.
The next thing is our Otis elevator contract for them to do their monthly inspections and have the state elevator inspection. It's $375 a month. They're keeping it at that for another year. If you're in agreement, I have the original here and I can get you to sign it before you leave.
Okay, so the current agreement that we have is
It's $375 a month.
And when was the last time that was changed? What was it?
We've only been with them for a year because they bought out the other company.
Oh, they go.
It was Bay State Elevator before.
Right. Yeah. And when they bought them out, did they raise the rates?
I think so.
Okay, well,
I think they actually might
in order to be handicapped compliant, we need to have functioning elevator, so I would move that we accept the contract, $375 a month for those elevator company.
Second,
Vote yes?
yes.
I'll get you to sign it at the end. Truck loan, I shouldn't have put an S on there, it's just a truck loan option. What she's gonna do is get a 1-year loan, which would be $51,700 with interest and principal for the upcoming town meeting, and then she's gonna come in, she being the treasurer, come in and discuss with you a combined loan for the library and the truck, which would be broken out separately, Mickey, but it would just be a combined loan for a lower interest rate next year.
I don't like combining loan.
She's gonna talk about the options then, but for right now, I just need you to be okay with the loan being for 1 year, and so you guys can discuss all your future planning,
Right, so.
and it would be $51,700.
Last year, we discussed, going up, just going 1 year at a time. See how the rates were working out, because there was a lot of unknown elements that were going on in the.
Basically, we got a lower rate this year than we had last year.
Took some doing. So I'm open to exploring that. I mean, is that for you?
Yeah, but no, that's going forward, I just need to know that you're okay with the 1-year note right now on the truck for $51,700. I'll have the bank documents for you probably in 2 weeks to sign.
Okay, yes, we have no problem with that, sorry.
Yes, okay. Alright, the final thing is, I want permission to send the request for quotes that the planning board wrote for, the master plan to council to review before
Okay.
we release it.
So we have representatives from the planning board here.
I just need.
Yeah, just briefly, the planning board, with the award of the grant for $40,000 to update the master plan over the last month or so, we, as a group, put together a RFQ to solicit bids to get a firm to help us do that. The body of the language of what we're asking for for help with the master plan is we've agreed on, but the details about procurement law and wording and such, we do need some help. And Melissa, if you're not the one to do that, then the attorney is.
Yeah, we've never done an RFQ here before, so I'd like their input on it.
I guess the other question is, I'm assuming that we would have to do a formal RFQ following procurement procedures, but maybe I'm wrong. Can we just send it to some people that we want to send it to? And
I'll get back to you on that, Tom, because it's under 50,000, I believe we have to, send out the scope to, a number of people, but let me get back to you then when we're not in the meeting here.
yeah, I'm not like looking to make it more complicated, but I also want to follow the rules.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So right now you're looking for the okay to go ahead and send it to council?
Yep.
I move. It's okay with me.
Second.
Okay. All right, yeah, we'll go yes, I go yes.
Yes.
And just one other thing, just as an update, our goal is to have selected a consultant so that we can have pricing and a direction for the town meeting in May, so that the voters can approve that, and we'll get going.
Good, that's great. I applaud your progress towards the master plan.
You're welcome.
Okay. You want to do, before we do the budget, can we go through the minutes, just through the minutes? Is that okay, Justin?
Doesn't bother me.
All right. I guess you are blue and I'm red.
I'm red. You're blue.
Oh.
Maybe different. Maybe you're blue on mine and I'm blue on.
That'd be confusing.
Oh,
So,
you're right. I'm sorry. You are red and I'm blue.
so my first comment was just about the American Rescue Plan Act, and I said this at the last meeting, but I think it'd be good to have a meeting solely devoted to this item to allow for more public discussion and a more time and thoughtful discussion by the board, when it's not just one item of many on the agenda.
Right, so you said that. Okay, good, yeah, I got no problem with that. And I just wanted to be more specific about 3, because I actually, the point that I was trying to make about having it available to this, town documents, have it available on the billboard, as well, is that individuals that did not have access to the internet or were not computer savvy, that's the bulletin board, I mean, and that's why I requested that, so that's what I added there.
Need the motion.
In reading it, it looked like Melissa made the motion, and I certainly didn't want anybody to interpret that Melissa's making motions. I don't want any tar and feather events here in Monterey. Okay, let's see.
So what it looks like I deleted, I moved under John Silver email dated January 5, 22, because those comments were specifically about that email. And I just wrote, Justin added that if someone wants to say something to the board, they need to come in person or put it in writing to protect both the person communicating and the intermediary from accusations of words being twisted, etc. It is just a better way to do business to rely on the actual words of people rather than hearsay. If the person is unwilling to put what they want to say to the board directly before the board at the meeting or in writing with his name signed to the writing, it should not be brought before the board.
Fine, there's no other amendments, I move that we accept the minutes of 1/12/22 with the changes that Justin and I made.
Second.
So yes?
Yes.
so you wanted to get in, okay, you wanted to get into the budget, or do you want to?
I'd be happy to talk about the budget.
What?
You wanna do the budget? Just preliminary review?
I'm gonna try to put up the sheet so everybody can see.
Oh, you have the,
I'm gonna try.
okay, okay, everybody, we're gonna
Technology,
try
we
to,
need work for us.
and again, I should mention, this is your first go around, Justin, these are our preliminary, you know, these are preliminary, we can obviously make changes as things progress. And if there's something that is not agreed on or whatever, we can always hold it in abeyance and revisit it. But it's really now just idea to have a general discussion about it. But again, if you wake up tomorrow and you say, oh my God, why did I agree to
There's no locking
give
yet.
Mickey a Hawaiian vacation, you can come back and you can put that away. What happened
I'm fine.
to the public?
Okay.
There they are.
Just, I need to be able to see.
Oh, the sheets,
I need to be
okay.
able to see this. As soon as it opens, you can keep talking, if you wanna tell me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these don't require, I don't think they require sheets.
Maybe if you have questions on certain ones, we can
Yeah,
just go
so,
to
and
those.
it's also a great idea, I mean, we've been attending some of these meetings to look at, what was actually spent from the appropriations. Not everybody is going to spend 100%. Especially in the COVID year. But it's,
Like 6th Street.
okay, so the, school committee rep, the first one, and it looks like the request and the appropriation from last year are the same. Correct? That's fine. Parks. Now, parks, a great deal of the parks budget is the contract for the lifeguards. So we have, obviously, if their amount goes up, their offering, or their needs go up. Looks like they're level funding. From last year on the general parks commission line, again, here's lifeguard payroll, that's contractual, so that went up. Would be surprised if it did not go up. And it looks like both the maintenance, sprinkles, full cleanup, and the contracted services are also funded at this, the request at the same rate as previous year.
Could you just, what line items are you looking at?
I'm sorry, so it's
He's not looking at
5290.
that, he's looking at the individual sheets, but that would
Okay.
be 6:30.
6:30.
Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you.
sorry, 630.
That's okay, thank you.
So I've no problems with that. Department 210 police. Police chiefs, so police chief salary is
So the police chief is in there for 1 year, the sergeant is in there for a half a year, because the chief will be retiring in December. And the plan is to not have a sergeant going forward, but to have 2 full-time officers, which would start in January for 6 months.
I think, I don't know if this is something that we should do as a board, but I think it would be good to request the proposed schedule?
So the proposed schedule is a 4 and 3 work week. It would be 4 days on and 3 days off, 10-hour shifts.
What happens with the other 4 hours?
So,
If there's 2 10-hour shifts in a day, what happens with those?
right, so the chief would be working during the day, then there'd be a little overlap with the, probably like 3 to, I can't remember exactly what he said, 3 to midnight or something like that. And then the midnight shift is, there's no one working there, but it's on call. So then there would be 2 shifts on the weekends. One with a part-time officer and one with a full-time officer, because they would be working Sunday to allow.
So I understand, and so providing an additional hour of coverage until 1 AM. I would like to just see it drafted out for some length of time, whether it's a month or a quarter or a half year, to see, because it's a change from our usual 8 to 4, 4 to midnight system. And having the chief work days and the sergeant work nights and having the weekends be part-timers. So if we could get that, I would appreciate that.
Will do.
But as submitted, it represents less than a 2% rate, 1.88%. And I'm assuming that's the over, what I'm looking for the rest of the items and everything else seems to be the same.
And so the only other item that I think is noteworthy on here is the security cameras outside of town hall, which is estimated at 3,500.
Yes, the guy is coming Friday to give me an actual, to look at the building and give me an actual estimate.
And that is something, by the way, that has been under discussion for several years. Unfortunately, I think there was at one point some grant money out there, but it evaporated. So, but I think it's valuable. Okay. Cultural council, each year. Yes.
I'm just gonna, I think in the past you guys did this, I'm gonna suggest that with one of you or the police chief or whoever, make sure to stand up when this comes forward at town meeting and just explain why the changes are happening and what they are kind of succinctly, because I think you get a lot less pushback on change if people understand the nature of the change and why it's happening and why it's a good thing. And I think a lot of times people have been reticent to have part-time people go to full-time. But if there are 14 shifts and a normal salaried person takes 5, that is essentially 3 people.
So this, a lot of this has to do with the new police reform,
Yeah.
and
But
part-time
even if it
officers.
didn't, this might not be a bad idea, right? Because technically 14 shifts, that's pretty much 3 people, right? That's your 1 shift short of actual 3 full-time people. So not only do you have that, but the reality is maybe it should happen anyway, right? So if people understand that we're there anyway, and the push is coming at the same time, it's just more reasons to do what you should have done anyway.
No, I believe that that and then the change of the department.
Yeah.
The chief should be prepared to
That's right.
to answer to those people on the annual town meeting.
But I just think if somebody gives a clear statement, instead of having to be on the spot, people like, then they're gonna get peppered anyway. But I think that it will set a better mood if it's put forward as, here, this is why. Discuss.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, very good point.
It's clear up front. There'll be more.
Yeah.
And the
And-
questions will be better, and the discussion will be more informed.
And I would suggest that, we have, something that maybe also is explained in the moderating industry, right before town meeting. Maybe the chief could write something. I know he loves to do that. Or a discuss, or at least well, we're gonna have an explanation of some things that are gonna change anyway. So that might be, that might be valuable.
Yeah.
Gives people some information. So that's good. Cultural council, every year, the town, grants the cultural council, $3,000. I see that their expenditures, but this is directly related to COVID. It's hard to do events when you can't have people in the same place. So, in other years, they've used most, if not all, of the funds that the town does budget for them. And, especially when it comes to, hopefully the downtown's gonna be hopefully the general store's gonna open up, the downtown's gonna be a little bit more revitalized, and there might be more opportunities for the cultural council to do projects, and COVID's not. So I would recommend we continue to give them the $3,000. Town council,
So I'm still waiting to hear back from him on the litigation fees and expenses, so I just level funded that for right now, but, he did say that it will be going
How much?
for the retainer, so the retainer would be 19,000.
What's the, line
It's in the 100s,
item? Council retainer?
Yep.
Okay.
So when I looked at the
151.
engagement letter, it mentioned an increase in the hourly litigation fees with KP, but we're still using Jeremiah on our existing cases, right? Jeremiah Pollard.
yes, but one of them has settled, and I'm not sure, on the other one, the planning board one, I'm not confirmed. If Tom's still on there, maybe we can,
is he still there?
Yeah, I requested an update from Jeremiah end of the year, and he still had not heard of a decision from the court, so it's still out in the air.
Okay.
So, my question was more on the retainer. We signed a retainer agreement with KP for 17,000 in September for 1 year. Is there reason to believe that it will be 19,000 next year? Or is
yes,
that a previous agreement with?
that's direct from KP.
Okay.
That fiscal year 23 would be 19,000.
Was that in the engagement letter?
Um,
I was just, because I remembered a rate increase, so I went back and looked at the engagement letter, but what I saw was actually the litigation went up from like 210 to 220 to 230. I didn't see anything about the next year's retainer, but maybe I missed it in there, or maybe it was somewhere else. That's my only comment on this council.
Well, we should look it up. The article.
And that one's not completely
What?
finished yet, but, you guys should weigh in on whether now or when you meet with the finance committee, if we're gonna put any money into the stabilization fund this year. The bridges, roads and culvert, I level funded them for right now, but, we should discuss that.
So what
The
is?
fire department stabilization,
So did you have the meeting with the first go around with the fire department?
yes, we still need to have one more, he's looking up some numbers for me.
Do we have the schedule of equipment? Especially, I mean, I'm talking about like the truck schedule, essentially the fire.
The capital, yes,
Um,
it's the last sheet in your big sheets,
So the reason why there was, fire department stabilization is because their requests for equipment, i.e. fire trucks or emergency vehicles, because that's always such a big number, and it always comes as a major shock, and as you may or may not recall, but, you know, when the last, when the ladder truck was purchased, there was some very, people got involved in the discussion. So, everybody has strong opinions about it. And I think it's one of the best things we ever did, but that's my opinion. But these vehicles are gonna become even more expensive. That one, I believe at the time, we got a deal because it was built for some other town, but if we didn't have that, I think the price was something in the $750,000-$800,000, so I would assume that the next vehicle is going to hit the $1 million mark. I'd be very surprised if it did. So that's why it was felt in a board that I was not on to develop a fire department stabilization, so that we put away a little bit of money every year, so that there's not a lot of bigger sticker shock or budget shock when we actually need the equipment. I understand that you're on the fire company, so, but I don't think there's an ethical concern here.
No, I don't think that stabilization money would be used on wages.
Right, it's
From my
not.
understanding. One, on the special articles page, I think the stabilization funds is definitely something that we should discuss about using all three of them or combining them and what we want our target for stabilization to be. Also, I see shared HR manager, and is there any update on shared HR manager?
Yes, unfortunately, it's not a good one. So the most recent offer we made, she declined, and the other 4 towns have decided that because it's budget time and there's too much going on right at the moment, they want to put this on hold until April. At which time we'll put the ad back out again and/or consider using a headhunter.
Might it make sense to, and I don't know what's allowed by law, but write the line so that if no shared manager can be found, it could be spent on HR, on our own, HR consulting. And I don't want to reduce the transparency, but I think for the purpose of the taxpayer, it's going towards the same end result, in at least.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a perfect idea. Because I do believe that if spot towns can't get their act together, that's one thing that we know that we need here in Monterey is human resources. And if we have to contract it on our own, I don't know, if it's supportable, then we should seriously, or this board or future boards should consider it.
I just wanna plant a seed in that, I think Hillel a while back, in a conversation I had with him, said that if you have, a job that has different phases, is intermittent, it's sometimes better to hire a firm or consultant, because if you have a need that's initially high, but maintenance is not high, it's very hard to hire someone and then, like, yes, we want you for 60 hours and then we're gonna go down to 4 hours a week. But if you hire someone from a firm with a clear thing, okay, we need this job done. We need to rewrite the manual, we need to go over how we're handling staff and set new parameters, but then maintenance is only gonna be this, that's not a big deal for them to do, it's basically a contract. Or you can contract to do that first part and then hire that part-time person. And I was always concerned that the 4 hours a week or whatever the pay period wasn't going to be enough to get that initial nut fixed. So maybe we should just put, since it hasn't worked out and it's been a whole nother year, maybe we should just go forward with that concept. What if we said, hey, can we get this much money to hire someone or a firm to do the job of revamping the job descriptions, revamping the personnel manual, establishing new procedures, and getting that done, and make that a separate thing from necessarily having a person that's the HR person to maintain, because by that time, maybe that person will be hired. But we'll have that other stuff in place. Just a thought.
So I do have a price on that. If we're gonna continue with the shared though, I think it's gonna be easier for that person's gonna be doing it, for 5 towns with maybe tweaks per town. So if we already have it done, that would be less hours for Monterey. And it's not that the other towns, it's not them not getting their stuff together, it's the applicants. To be honest, the last applicant was very concerned that she was going to be responsible to figure out what the investigators, and she was very scared. So she turned it down.
So, did everybody hear that? So there's the irony in the situation. That because of all the press about Monterey, it scared away the one individual that we would need to avoid more press in Monterey. So there's fallout when you air your dirty laundry in public. Sometimes it feels good, but there's fallout. Anyway, well, first of all, I would also let's change.
I'll change it to HR manager consultant. And 10,000 was just a placeholder there. I need to find out from Barrington, once we hire the shared, what our actual share would be.
Okay, and again, we're going to come back to this.
Was there grant money initially?
There is grant money, $75,000.
But our 10 on top would be on top of that.
So that would be after we've spent the 75,000. So that we may not even need it in there if we end up getting someone that brings us to next year.
Right.
Because we don't have to spend the funds until January of 2023, I believe. So we're only gonna need a portion of it. And we might be able to get an extension as well.
Was this 75 for the 5 towns or for us?
No, it's for the 5 towns. Oh. It's for shared.
Great.
I mean, our state rep, the Smitty, they're all about the state legislature, especially for Western Massachusetts, they're all about shared services. And they have provided services. So we've explored different types of shared services, and the challenge is that these small towns have always acted as their own kingdoms. So it has been hard for small towns to talk about shared services without everybody getting in a twist. This is one of the few ones that everybody said, that sounds good, let's join in. So, the school consolidation, there was no request, they didn't make a request this year?
No. I can check in with Lucy Groshker if you want.
Are they still meeting?
They are, they just put out a request for proposals. I just sent it around today, I believe.
Okay, that was the amount that I didn't throw about spending on, but. Okay, services. Okay, so we don't have, you still have a lot of open items on it. That's all. And a general stabilization, what do we have now in there? Is it 500? Now?
$546,955.
Excellent, good. So. ZBA is a same request, $250, plus a open line item for ZBA administrative assistant. Just $1, just to keep the line open. I guess I'm assuming they still want the line open. Excuse me. Conservation Commission. Okay. I see they declined the meeting. Somebody out there? Somebody say something? No?
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought. Anyway, so it seems like it's a similar request. Okay. Fire company, fire compensation.
The fire company is adding 2 more shifts, on the weekends from 5:30 in the morning to 5:30 PM for the duty shift. So that they can have better coverage. And actually, if you remind me, I just, Sean just sent me a pretty interesting, like 15-minute YouTube thing from a fire chief from a small town about moving to these duty shift programs, and that's how you keep retention in small towns like ours that are volunteer departments, and how you prevent burnout and really play up to everybody's strengths. If you want to see it, just remind me and I will send it to you.
So the request is 15% up from last year, and it's really these shifts.
It's that and the maintenance. He said that the cost of parts and maintenance has increased dramatically. Hourly rate went from 85 to 125 an hour, and each truck requires a minimum of 40 hours of service a year.
So I won't be participating on that specific line, fire department compensation.
I understand that, and that's fine. I'm looking forward to sitting down with the chief and with the finance committee and talking to fire chief about it. I understand the merits of the shift program. I just, I'm concerned that, as you see, it's becoming a big number.
It's nearly doubled since 2021.
As have the calls, though.
Oh, sadly true.
And as I have explained to some people in the past, our other problem is that we don't have homegrown firefighters. So if we're getting firefighters from, let's use Beckett because we have firefighters from Beckett, the shift program is the only way for them to be here. I mean, if there's a fire, we're not going to wait for people to come in from Beckett to assist. It's better that they're here.
Can I suggest that prior to the town meeting, it would be great if the chief could pull together, I mean, it's published other places, but when this comes up, if he has ready to hand, compare the number of calls from 2021 to
Yes.
2022, and this will sound wacky, but the total value of the properties involved in the 2022 calls.
The homes that they went to?
Sure,
That would take a long time, Susan.
would it?
We'd have to
I'm-
look on every, I mean,
Right.
they get over 160 calls, I think you guys
Holy
are up
cow.
to. We'd have to look up everybody's
Yes, I'm
valuation.
just thinking, if you look at the 138,000 and you compare it to if those buildings had burned, suddenly it seems like a bargain, that's all. And it may be spurious, I may be totally off base, but it was just a thought I had.
The other thing is also when it comes to emergency services, I would like the board to remember that if any of these additional expenses may be tangentially related to COVID, that some of that That ARPA funding can help to take to make it less of an impact on the taxpayers and use some of that ARPA funding to kind of offset some of these things. So if the extra duty guys are, because it's hard to get people to fulfill their shifts because of COVID, maybe the extra duty work can be paid for with ARPA funds, so that taxpayers don't have to pay for it. I mean, they're ultimately paying for it anyway because it's coming from the federal government, you're paying the taxes. But the idea is that it has less of a direct impact to taxpayers. I know I briefly looked at the town of Danvers as how they're using their ARPA funds. I know we're not doing ARPA, but they did. I think they did have emergency services as part of that. So you might want to consider an offset. But again, let's continue. Department Council on Aging. That's 541.
This appears to be a large increase only because we've moved the outreach coordinator from a special article to a continuing operating budget position.
And obviously that's going to be important to note for town meeting.
Melissa, I think there's a hand up in the gallery here.
Sorry, we can't see when I share my screen.
Hi, yes. Hi, Steve Moore.
I just want to drop back to the fire company shift time.
Sure.
Hold on. I just want to drop back to the fire conversation. I'm interested in how Susan suggested a count of the number of calls and then the property values, which of course would be pretty complicated. But a lot of those calls are mutual aid in other towns. And I have no idea how the costs for mutual aid break down, but I think it could have bearing on Monterey if we seem to be responding to a great number of calls in other towns, but we're not getting that kind of support from the towns back to Monterey. Thank you.
So we can look at that. It gets a little touchy because, the mutual aid is the unwritten, like the golden rule. One of the wonderful things I think about living out here is that we all help each other. And so if there's a town that needs our assistance, we provide it. And yes, we do expect that the same in return. And I don't believe we've had problems getting responses. I think actually I don't know how many mutual aid calls we've actually received as opposed to given out, but it's never going to be even. And it's one of the things. Again, it's important if we should have a major event in town. So it'd be interesting in looking at the numbers, but I do know that another select board member once said that they were against mutual aid calls, and that's, you just can't be in an environment like this, especially since we have such great equipment. Yes, Steve. Steve?
So part of my concern is, it's my understanding that our town has one of the best equipped small towns in South County. And if we continue to spend money on having the best equipment, it may allow other towns, this is just a conjecture, but it may allow other towns to avoid some of those expenses on their budgets. I'm fully in support of mutual aid. I think it's a wonderful thing, but it's concerning if we consistently respond quicker because we're paying for shifts, because we're paying for the equipment, and other towns might be able to, sort of take advantage of the fact that Monterey fully backs its fire company. I think we should fully back our fire company, but per Sue's suggestion, if there's going to be an analysis of the calls and property values, I think it would be a smart thing to know about calls in town and out of town and so on. But that's up to you guys. I'm just mentioning it as an idea. Thank you.
No,
I'll get those numbers.
we'll get the numbers. We'll get the numbers. And actually, I remember when we bought the ladder truck. I was to understand a lot of towns were not happy with us only because we had a ladder truck and they didn't, and so they felt that some of the townspeople said, well, if Monterey has a ladder truck, why don't we have a ladder truck? So it almost worked the opposite. But I don't know how many of them have upgraded their equipment. I gotta tell you, I'm full of pride when I see on Facebook that what truck 172 is the ladder. 172 goes out there and saves somebody's house in Otis or whatever. I think it's. I mean, I understand you don't want to be paying for that. Nobody does, but I think it's great. Monterey can be out there and do some good. But yeah, I get it. We'll get the numbers.
And just for the record, I wasn't saying we should be undermining the fire department. I want him to be able to say, this is the value of this service. So I'm not going for the opposite here.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to understand the value of the service they're getting, because I think it is exceptional.
I think Ken, if you've read the Monterey News, Ken's article was spot on.
Yeah.
He kind of brought it home a bit. Okay, so council of engineer went through, and board of assessors,
So this will be going down a little bit. During our meeting, he noted that he needed an upgrade on one of their computers, and I told him that we had money in the budget, so he's fixed right now. I'm just waiting for the invoice, and once we get that, we're gonna lower this request by that amount, probably be $200 or $300.
great.
Is that assessor software?
Yeah, it'll be assessor's expenses.
Okay. I was wondering why it was going down so much, actually.
Don't say that out loud.
Well, but certainly they're not doing less work.
No, a lot of it is, yeah.
The professional services went down, the outside consultants that they hire.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so I see that for building inspector, number 240, that an alternate, do you have this, do you have a meeting or?
Don is not going to use an alternate inspector anymore here. He's gonna cover the office himself. He will have people covering when he's on vacation or else sick. But that was for when we had Owen here on Mondays. Unfortunately, Owen got sick and Don doesn't feel that there's a good pool of applicants out there right now, and so that's why that's lowered.
But he still has money in there in case you need to have somebody fill in temporarily.
In case somebody needs rain.
Tree warden, okay, so I see, is looking for, 6.43, that's, number 294, Susan?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, looking for an increase, as everybody knows, this, animal ash borer is laying waste to a lot of our trees, so I would expect that the tree warden is working more. Okay, yeah, I just, no problem. Board of Health. There's a 0.5% increase.
Yes, I'm still waiting on a final number on the permitting software. That's the increase right there, is the estimate that I put in.
Transfer station.
So, Jim and I have discussed this quite a bit, and we're proposing, since we're having difficulty finding 2 part-time people to work there, that we make this a full-time position, and we call it a maintenance transfer station attendant, similar to what the town of Stockbridge does. We see a schedule of 5 days, I think, Sunday, I can't remember, I don't have those notes in front of me, but Wednesday to Sunday or something like that. They would work 8 to 4. We're proposing to change the Sunday hours of the dump a little bit, and the Saturday ones, so that they would be 8 to 4 instead of what they currently are. When he or she, is not working at the transfer station, they would be doing small maintenance. They would clean all the town buildings, which would allow us to lower the budgets in the town office and the library for cleaning services. They would handle small maintenance items. They would do shoveling in the wintertime, mowing and weed whacking up around the transfer station.
So,
And
do you think that somebody like this that exists?
We do. And we think it's a much more desirable position, full-time with benefits versus especially trying to find 2 people that are part-time. I think, you got really lucky.
Right, and we did get lucky.
So we're thinking if the position is a little more exciting, we might attract.
And so the total salary for this?
So that's the total salary right there, the 39,672. It works out to be, I think, about 18 or 23 if you were to break it up between transfer station and whatever other department we want to assign it to, whether it's highway or
What would the total be with the healthcare policy?
So the healthcare is approximately 23,000 for a family. Obviously, if somebody was a couple or a single, it would be a little bit less. So total, you're looking at about 60,000 for the position. But we would drop, I think it's 2,000 from the library for cleaning and 6,000 here for cleaning.
What's everyone's having trouble hiring, it's not just us. What's the going rate for an hourly wage job that actually is getting applicants? Do you have any idea? I honestly don't, so.
Sounds like it's $22.
Yeah, we were proposing this at 18, but I mean, I don't know that we're being realistic there either. I mean, Great Barrington starts their shovel laborers in a room at like $22.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we also have to take into consideration that who we're competing against. Great Barrington has better benefits and, but we just wanted to get the idea out there, see if the select board and finance committee agree with it, and then we can make a more, we can answer any further questions you have and dive into it a little deeper.
I'm just concerned that a person that's willing to do all those things it's not really out there. Especially if they're, I don't know, unless I'm wrong, I don't know if I necessarily see somebody, like I'm trying to imagine any of these transfer station people also coming in here and cleaning. I mean, I know that used to do it, or does it, but, it almost seems, I don't know.
Yeah, and then do the mowing and the trimming.
There'd have to be a
Well,
rule.
actually, if any good wife could probably do that.
Well, maybe we can steal the one that Stockbridge has, because this is basically their job description.
When it says assist equipment operators in plowing, does that mean actually plowing as well in a pinch or something?
I would think, maybe up at the transfer station, using the truck there. I know they have a snow blower as well.
Do you have a job description? Is that what it is?
Whatever they don't need,
I need one.
special license on. I mean,
Not to drive a regular truck.
it's an interesting idea. I mean, the thing is, we're not gonna know if it's gonna work until we hire somebody. And we did get lucky, by the way, when we first had we built the transfer station, and we had Ben and Dave. I mean, it was like, yeah, they both showed up and it was like a miracle. And then Dave and Beth, you know, and then Dave and Beth, when they could continue. But yeah, this seems to be a lack of people. I mean, I'm certainly open to it. If it's even if the amount is the same as what we were previously paying.
I have some concerns about, as I am, in order to go from 2 to 1 at the transfer station, the way the transfer station runs is going to have to change, correct?
So that's why we wanna know if they support it or not, and then I think we need to have a bigger meeting with Jim and I here where we go over our suggestions. I mean, the main things would be not collecting money up there anymore.
Yep.
That we either do something similar like what Sheffield does where you get a bulky waste sticker, or you only collect bulky waste on certain days, like, mattresses, or maybe only on the first Sunday of the month. So that the person isn't running around from container to container, and those are all things that we would need to talk, as well as the transfer sticker fee, how we're going to.
We need to have.
There's a lot of conversations, but I didn't wanna spend a whole lot of time
Right.
putting a lot of energy into this if you guys were like, nope, absolutely not, we want 2 people.
There is a problem that I have with not having all the facilities available at all the time, because that's what has made it successful. And I would rather pay much more on my taxes than find mattresses thrown off the edge of the road on my road, which I had done some years ago, before we had the availability for everything. So once we got, you don't find a lot of garbage on the sides of our roads here, because you can just go to the dump and take it there.
Right.
You know, and it's a big thing in my mind, and I don't want to see it go back to, having somebody dump a whole bunch of garbage
Right.
stick place in the side of the road, and then have to go clean that up, and it's part of, just keeping this town clean.
Right.
And if it's in the taxes, I don't care, and it's costing me more.
Well, there's also the possibility of taking a look at the sticker fee. A lot of towns have a higher sticker fee, but pay individually for to throw away items.
which you should, because they're expensive to get rid of.
Right, and then some people like me, how many old televisions I stored for a while because I finally started tripping all over them. And it was not because I didn't want to pay the fee, it was that I was like, oh, I got to
Who wants
go,
to do it?
whatever. So anyway, we're gonna have a big transfer station discussion about it, because I think that we've tested the current system for quite a while.
You're not fighting it.
I think we have a good understanding of what's working, a few things that may not be.
I'm just concerned that the way it runs, I'm with Mickey. I think that, it ran really well with 2 people. So the question is, can we figure out a system that won't be significantly more expensive, or even if it's a little more expensive? Maybe the solution is to have a full-time employee and a part-time employee. Maybe the solution is to what if we pay the 2 part-time employees $25 an hour? I'm not sure what would work, so I'm just throwing ideas out there, but my hesitation is going from 2, where it worked really well, to 1, where we'd have to significantly change the functioning. And let's face it, the transfer station costs a lot of money, and it's not just the salaries. But we could actually make it cost more because of people dumping inappropriately.
That's right, not dumping.
We could end up.
How many times have you gone and said, what do I do with this?
A lot.
And they say, oh, it goes over there, I'm heading that way, I'll take it, or it goes over there,
Yep.
But I mean, you always see somebody opening their trunk and saying, not knowing where things go, even though you go every week.
Sure.
And there's still something you bring up there and you need help with. And if you start, like Susan said, if you start throwing things in the wrong, then it's gonna up the cost of our dumpsters, so. It's not necessarily the right answer, I don't know.
All right, so so we'll have a meeting on that, let's continue over here. Just 491 cemetery, do you have this?
Can I make one comment?
Oh, sure.
I would just say that in general, my preference at the moment would be to raise rates and look for similar staffing that we have had, rather than change the position.
I think regardless, we're gonna have to raise the rates, just so you know.
Yeah.
The rates are gonna have to go to at least $100 to $150 for a sticker.
No, sorry, not the rates of the
You mean the bulky waste?
No,
the employee.
Oh.
I would rather look for the same and look for and try and hire the same position. And if we are not getting applicants, raise the pay rate rather than.
So do we have an ad out now?
Yes, and we have signed, Jim put up with the,
fine.
I don't think it's the rate, that's,
The only one who wants to work at a Christmas station in the middle of winter. I don't blame them.
The rate may not be the reason why people aren't applying, but it could be the reason that people do apply. I don't know. I feel like it's run really well, and I'd like to see it stay with two attendants.
it's a conversation worth having, but I just caution you that if you raise the pay to $25 per hour, let's say, you're gonna have some upset DPW guys who aren't making that, and they have licenses to run trucks. Your police department's not making that, so you gotta think about the position.
Actually,
and.
Yes, I remember when we hired Ben and Dave, and we initially were paying them more than we were paying our own police officers. And it was made known to us, like, hey, listen, so we could lower the Ben and Dave's salary, so we adjusted the police officer's salary. That you got an organization here, and people pay attention to what other people are making. But I agree with Justin that I would ideally, I'd rather have two people than one person. I'm concerned that we're gonna find this one super duper person. But we need to have more of a discussion about it, because there does need to be, we also have to do look at some of it. We do need to look at some revenue numbers for the transfer station as well. I think for a long time.
Right now, the transfer station is operating at a loss.
And-
Which it probably does in most towns.
It comes out of taxes,
I mean, I know in every city.
part of the,
It's an interesting exploration, because
I think of the dump sticker as just a thing to identify who's going there, not for making the money. To me, that.
right, but there's a general philosophy that the people that are using the station should have more of a stake in paying for it than people who are not using it.
How many people in town don't use this transfer station?
I-
What do they do with it?
They have private,
Big
a lot of
contract.
people have private party.
So they don't want to touch the garbage.
When I first came out, I bought my house until we had a private service, so I just took the private service, and then I once went to the transfer station, and the guy from Garval, the old Garvalogist guy, yelled at me, and then it took me another year for me to go back up to the transfer station.
And then there's a middle of the road too. There's something to be said, I think there's something, it's a bigger conversation, like you
It's a
said.
bigger
There's something to be
conversation.
said for going to the system of polluter pays, at least to some degree, even if you underwrite it. Because I think it encourages good behavior. If you have to pay for what you dispose of, then you think, like, for a lot of people, it's free to separate your recyclables, but I have to pay for it if it's in the garbage bag. It's free to put things in the compost, but I have to pay for it if I put it in the garbage bag. So you can foster better behavior environmentally by asking people to pay for their trash by the bag, for example. That's one example, but there's a lot of things that could foster better behavior. Not everybody's gonna do it, but you can. And for some people, it might save them money, and for other people, it's gonna cost them money.
So every year we do an analysis of sticker fees in all the adjoining towns. We'll do that as well for the discussion, and we'll get some real numbers on how. I wonder, yeah, we should get some numbers on trying to figure out how many people are using the station versus.
Bag or tag, yeah. I bet you know.
Versus not. Okay, let's continue. We're moving along very nicely. So cemetery, you didn't have the meeting, or
Okay.
nothing's changed?
Nothing's changed.
That's good. Tax collector, I would expect the software,
Yeah, we're still waiting for an estimate on that.
okay, and postage, but yeah, postage and software, that's generally what happens. Okay, financial services, now we contract with them, right?
Correct.
So ultimately, it's a less than 2% raise. The only difference being payroll services, postage and mailing, which, and the contract. I think it's wonderful going through a year without having to worry about the financial services, which is usually a yearly event. Library,
So the library is requesting a 3.8% increase for their staff. They originally called it a merit increase, but after some discussion, they said it was due more to the responsibilities added from COVID. I would just mention that the few departments that have caught wind of this have asked about their increase for the responsibilities due to COVID in their departments.
okay, so without the COVID discussion, oh yes, sir.
I won't be discussing library with you.
Okay. Don't worry, Mickey, we'll pick up the slack. So, well, you know what, I don't want to really discuss wages without a general discussion of what we're going to be doing for wages for everybody. Because
This had nothing to do with COLA.
I understand that. But, no, I understand, I understand that, and there's, when we have a discussion about, I've got there's some other ideas out there. I'm not discounting it. I'm just trying to make an understanding that it's a total 3.8% request.
It's, yeah, but it doesn't amount to a whole lot of money. The thing is that they have an evaluation and they have stepped up at every second. Nobody ever said, I ain't coming to work and I'm not gonna take books and put them outside on a table. They went to work every day that we were able to be open and nobody ever bitched, and that was a big part of it, but not all of it.
Right.
It's just that their work ethics they should be rewarded. This is a merit raise for their work and for what they put into making these changes that have to be made. For cleaning the place constantly.
Right, so, no, I get
know,
that, and I also do believe that there are other employees in town hall that also, that also have stepped up. So I think, I'm not,
I'm not saying, but we have an evaluation of every employee every year, which is a good part of being able to do this, is because you can see what they've done and stuff. It's not just, I think you have to have an evaluation before you give merit raises.
But the town doesn't give merit raises, and that was the discussion that we had with John and Mark, and they agreed to call it an increase in responsibilities rather than a merit increase, because no other departments get merit increases.
Okay, can I move to another line? Because we're gonna continue to have this conversation. This is just the first blush. I have a question about, building repairs and maintenance.
Mark explained that they weren't fully aware with the new building, the costs that were gonna come with it, such as the batteries that need to be changed and a lot of the items, the extinguishers that need to be maintained every year, the lighting, the HVAC, duct cleaning, the building management systems. And it also increased because the custodial was moved into building repairs and maintenance. They hired an outside company.
What line was that in?
It's still the library, but it's library maintenance.
Okay.
Oh,
In particular, this 12,900, Mickey, correct me if I'm wrong, but it includes a one-time HVAC cleaning, which is a few thousand, and
Well, it's not a one-time, it's
Well,
something that it has to be.
recurring, but this is the first time
This
it's
is the
being
first
done.
time it'll be done,
And
and
it's-
actually they said this, that we were told that there's probably stuff down in the, from the building that they haven't been cleaned out. But it's something that you have to do, and to keep clean air
yeah,
going, you have to clean your. clean
So,
your HVAC systems.
so we say one time, but the next
Once a
year,
year.
it's once a year.
Sorry, this is the first time in 3 years, I think it will happen every 3 years or something.
Every 2 or 3
Every
years
2
or
or
something like that, yeah. But
Also,
they did say it might be actually cost us more this time because of
'Cause they haven't
building
done it in a
debris
while.
possibly being in there. And
and I believe this number also includes the septic being pumped for 50%.
Yes. Which is not every year.
That's
but-
important.
Yeah, but we gotta do it.
Yes. Oh, I know that. Finance, Department 131,
They didn't do theirs yet.
so, after that. Department 160-163 clerk.
Clerk needs to meet again for a preliminary budget. She's proposing an increase to 25 hours a week, but she couldn't justify why the number of hours were needed. So she's been asked to come to another meeting to justify what work is being done in there, how much time she's spending on things, why she needs 5.25 more hours a week. It was explained that when this job was put out there, it was always a less than 20-hour a week job with no benefits. It was also suggested during the meeting that if more hours are needed, you give the hours to the lower paid staff rather than the higher paid staff. There was a few discrepancies during the meeting, which hopefully will get cleared up in the next meeting, so this one's not fully ready.
All right, so we'll come back to that. Planning board. We just got that whole thing, say this one's on her own. That's fine. Okay.
So, the question that I have about planning board clerk, if there is consideration of an office assistant position with the planning board clerk, would that be involved?
Yes, I just need to confirm with Tom, but if they agreed with, the person hired, the intention is to have them cover planning board, parks, finance committee, building department, and that this would go away as well for 2520.
That's a good point. Community center. Looks like their needs are the same, they just kind of shuffle some things around a little bit.
Yes, and remember, this is a revolving fund, this isn't in the budget, the only item that is on the operating budget is the administrative staff.
Right.
Which right now, I should have said in the beginning, all staff was level funded, because you guys didn't give any guidance on COLA or anything.
Well, take the best for last. Select board,
Is that general or other?
this is other. I don't see a line item for a therapist.
Can you have one for the other boards too? Same one.
I also would like a tequila line item.
So the only thing missing on yours is the loan payment for the new tandem axle loan, which I will add in.
Loan payment for what?
The tandem axle truck, the 5170 you guys just approved earlier in the meeting.
I don't understand, why is this, why, oh, these, okay, so your other is not really.
It's not the special articles, where is the other?
Other is all a bunch of different things. It's like the moderator, the schools. the-
Okay.
Can we, in regards to library loan, would it be possible to consult? How much money should we spend? Should we spend the minimum amount or should we spend more?
So we're gonna bring in, at least we did last year, and I think it was very helpful, we were gonna bring in, the banker now. Do you have a discussion about this, Melissa?
I don't remember bringing in the banker, but,
Yes, we did, because it was somebody, not to mention who, it's not nice to him. It's nobody.
I couldn't hear what you said, she's right, you just faded right off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you got 10 more minutes, you gotta speak up.
Yeah.
After that, you can start fading.
All right, okay. Anyway, what's the discussion, what is the specific question?
Well, it's my understanding that it may make sense to pay the minimum payment and it may make sense to pay more. And I'm not knowledgeable enough to know, but could we get an opinion?
Yeah, we usually last year we got a schedule, like if you did it one way, this is what the amounts would be. You remember this,
Yes.
you were there.
The thing is, you're paying so little interest, you should pay as much as you can.
Yep.
And a few more dollars than that, because it's basically free money. It's only 4 points, I didn't look it up, but it's only 0.4 something, not 0.4 something interest, so it's like basically free. I mean, it's something that,
So then why should we,
so you pay more money now while it's free,
Because,
Okay.
and then you don't have to pay more money when the rates go up, which they will.
so if you pay down the capital, when the rate goes up, you pay down more and you're amortizing less.
so we don't have a fixed rate?
No, so
They're
they're 1 year
1 year.
notes.
See, it has.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, so you're basically betting on, you have to bet whether the rates are gonna go up or down.
Last year it was also fairly free, it was only 0.61, I think, for last year.
last year we had the guy, I forget his name, Unibank.
Dave Dave
Eisenthal.
Eisenthal. It started with an E, and had a fall on the end.
I'd like to,
Yeah, I think what you did last year though is you need to tell me roughly what you wanna pay, so he can, like, he's not gonna just come in here and figure those, you have to give me the numbers ahead of time, so. If you wanna
he
make
gave
them,
us like 2 alternatives or 3 alternatives. Okay, this amount, it stretches out for this long. He gave us some alternative.
but I think you gave him
Yeah.
guidance first, he didn't just make numbers up, pay.
Well, either paying the minimum.
Yeah.
Paying
Pay $100,000.
a certain amount of capital in there, and 2 aggressive capital strategies. So we have 3.
What's the amount remaining on the loan?
Nikki?
$1 million.
Approximately $1 million.
So exactly $1 million, because that's what we paid it down to last year.
Okay.
And so if you pay off $100,000 a year, 10 years, we're done. If you start dripping and drabbing it, it just gets ridiculous.
Okay.
I'm a big get rid of debt person, and free money, I'm even more interested in paying it down.
I agree.
The other question I have on this page is health insurance.
Mhm.
So is the projected 207 for 13 policies,
Yes.
projected?
Yes, and remember that this year, Maya gave us 1 month free, so the increase looks substantial because last year was only for 11 months, and this is for 12 months unless they give it to us again, which I won't know until probably next month.
And the 13 would include the new
The new
positions?
positions, yeah.
Okay.
So it includes the transfer station, the 2 new police for 6 months, and administrative position.
It's one police additional policy, right?
It's 2 full-time officers starting in
The
January.
chief will be off the
Yeah.
policy, right?
So the chief will be off, but his spouse will still be on a single plan because she's not Medic's age yet, and he goes to Medic's. We pay for our retiree spouses.
And the rest, okay.
There is a spreadsheet in the thing, a tab in the spreadsheet I sent you guys that breaks that all down for you.
Terrific. So general government. Says, the office assistant line. Is due.
Did that include your projection of increases for health insurance? They
Yes.
haven't, okay, even though they haven't got back to us yet, okay.
Trust you. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm proposing a administrative office assistant for 20 hours a week, which would be backup for me. Do dump stickers, the more administrative tasks here that would free me up for other, more grant writing, whatever. They would also help the Parks Commission, the Building Commissioner, the Finance Committee, the Police Department, and the Planning Board if Tom agrees, which I believe he did.
So, I understand finance committee, planning board, and a few others have sought administrative help with minutes and stuff. But they haven't gotten any feedback, they haven't gotten any response.
Okay, so Finance Committee last year lowered the budget to $1. So, and it's my understanding that at the recent meetings, it's fallen to the chair because no one else will agree to write the minutes. So now she would like it back in the budget, but they haven't had their meeting yet. Was it a Parks has never had anybody and they don't have a budget for this, so they have asked during the meetings, which you attended, for help administratively. They're having trouble meeting the deadlines for submitting bills, and if there was someone here that could help them with that, that would be great. The building commissioner needs help with filing, so that's backing up. And the planning board needs minute taking and.
So this making it a 20-hour position would include a health insurance policy,
That's correct,
which would be almost as much as the salary, depending on which health insurance policy it is.
that's correct.
And
I propose it that way because I think a benefited position is much more attractive than a non-benefit position when you're looking for new help. And I think eventually, I've spoken about this before, is ideally, it would be helpful to have this person also be the assistant town clerk and make it a full 40-hour-a-week position that could handle both offices.
Well, it's definitely.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if there's requests for help in the clerk's office and these other offices, or more hours, sorry. I'm wondering if it makes sense to have a 20-hour position that we pay a health insurance policy, which is almost as much as the actual salary, rather than maybe making a 40-hour position somehow, or somehow figuring it out to make more sense than have a 20 and a 19 and a 7 and, the Council on Aging outreach work. I'm just wondering in what ways could they be combined, possibly.
Absolutely, I'm in full agreement with that. I think that, the town clerk, like I said, was originally for 15 hours. I think that was the more realistic hours for that office, and I think administrative staff here that helps out everybody, for maybe 30 hours a week is more realistic with benefits.
The thing is, we don't really know until we have somebody working in those positions. I can think of also other groups, committees that also do need some help, because there are people I think are falling behind on the minutes and some of their, I mean, I don't know, like the Billy Barfield working group is an example that comes to mind. Now we have a new group, this ultimate energy working group. So we may, I could see it evolving into a much more hours than is currently anticipated. I mean, originally when I saw it, I said, this should be a part-time position, no benefits, but as I think about it more, it sounds like it's actually going to be more than 20 hours. But we don't know until we have it. Ideally would be, I think it would take a lot of pressure off the various departments, including the clerk and the town administrator. And this was discussed, by the way, this is not a brand new thing. We had this brief discussion about this many years ago when we were first bringing in the first town administrator, and how that would work out, how would we work it out. So it's been bandied about, I think, over the years. Might be a good time to do it, especially since people are really paying attention to all the P's and Q's. Well,
But obviously, it's another conversation like the transfer station. I just wanted to put it out there, see if there was, support for it, and then I can get you more information. I started to make a schedule today to see what it would look like, and I agree with you, Steve. I think my 20 hours might be a little low, because if there's gonna be all these evening meetings that they have to attend, I think it might realistically be more like 30.
Yeah, and I would wonder, somewhat along the same lines of transfer station, it's not, if they're gonna be doing minutes for finance committee, planning board, building commissioner is in here in the evenings, what person might take the job?
So I took the job when I took it, that's how my job was. I had to do the ZBA, the Concom, all that met in, the evening, and I took the job. So I think it's someone that wants to advance their career and maybe, hopefully, Terry reported to us last year that she was gonna be retiring in, it was June of 2024. So getting someone prepared to possibly become the next town clerk, that wants to make a municipal career in public service, I think now is the time to start planning for that.
Plus, there are people that, if you have small children, you might not wanna be working then, but if you're a single person or a young married person without a family yet, you might like those hours. I know, my daughter wouldn't be interested in that job because she's in graduate school, but she loves evening hours. She would way rather have a job that was down and adjusted to starting work at 3 PM and going until 9, than she would. Not everybody's like that, but there are people who really would prefer that. So I don't think you should rule it out because it has evening hours.
Oh, I'm not
Because there are
saying,
tons of people who like that.
I'm not saying necessarily, it would also somewhat be flexible, because sometimes,
Very, yep.
three, all kinds of people in the evening, and some weeks not so much.
all right.
But, so would it be a shared between these and, the clerk's office, they would do some work? in the clerk's
So
office?
that's my future proposal, that's not in this current proposal.
So would
Obviously.
they lose their health insurance policy when they become clerk? Because clerk can't have a health insurance policy.
They wouldn't, because they would be 20 hours or whatever for their other position. When you work for a town, it's your combined number of hours that you work for the town that make you eligible for health insurance. So the minute you go over 20, you're eligible for health insurance.
So, All right, so
It's just
listen,
us.
I personally think that the grant writers is gonna be raised on the floor like it was last year.
Well, again, I would argue on that zero has been spent to date. And one of the grant writers has actually resigned and turned in the computer, so you only have Dennis left and myself. And I don't charge anything extra because it all falls under my town administrator job. And Dennis typically applies for $2,000 to $5,000 in writing the 2 FEMA grants that he has. So I think that's a more realistic number, and I'm happy to explain that.
No problem. Temporary employee, we always keep money in there.
Right, but we wouldn't need it if we had an office assistant.
Well, depends on what we need the employee for. What about the transfer station?
I mean,
Anyway,
is that a line we keep open?
it keeps it open, the dollar keeps it open, so.
Yeah.
And obviously, well, actually, that's all right, that temporary employee is, I mean, that's always been the good little extra in case we need to get somebody in here for one reason or another. It's hard to just appropriate those funds. So that's why it's always been funded. What would be the alternative?
Well, the things that they would be called in for would be done by the office assistant. I mean, the clerk has her own budget for census and other things that are above and beyond clerk things. The assessors have their own assistant. The building inspector would be covered in my proposal. The tax collector doesn't use any help, but we always have the senior tax work-off program as well. So I can't think of anything else that we would need assistance for. Now that we bring the warrants to QuickPrint, I don't need anybody to help me fold them anymore, which was what I typically used it for.
Okay.
Good to know.
All right, the only other thing that I mean, personally, computer software supplies, you name IT expenses, I think I'm always concerned that we're cheap out on. I mean, we need to be increasing our technology here in Monterey, and is $4,000 going to do it?
Well, 4,000 was what we used to have, and it was to replace computers or upgrade them every 3 years. So this computer would be replaced in the 3rd year. Last year it got lowered. I'm suggesting you bring it back up. The tax collector has said that she might possibly need a new printer as well, so that's figured in there. I mean, I've talked to our IT guy. You know, we're in pretty good shape. We're making some minor fixes right now. So.
All right, but we have to also decide if we want to upgrade this whole scenario here. Because this is this is like Gilligan's Island. Oh, sorry, bad reference, but.
That's just because we're old. And
Inflation.
but a lot of people don't know. But, so you feel like the software you're using for all the town functions is good? What about, like, does any of it, need the latest version? Not that you always want it, but sometimes you have to have it because sometimes the old ones are no longer supporting it. Okay,
Yes, I feel confident.
cool.
Okay, everything else is fine, and I understand about the custodial, highway.
So just so before you ask, and in the wages, the reason that Highway 3 is lower this year is because Highway 3 became, if I do this right, Highway 3 became Highway 2, and Highway 2 had become the director, so there was a big difference. We didn't need to, and to keep the proper separation between, the licenses and the number of years on the job. That's the hourly rates that we have in there.
So the experience of Highway 3 went down because people moved up. Is that?
Right. And he's just new with his license. Highway 4 doesn't have any licenses.
Okay.
Because it's just a laborer position. Highway 2, we're still looking to fill right now, but we have someone temporarily in there for the winter to help out, but he doesn't. And then the other major increases are really fuel and electricity because of the 21.9% increase with National Grid, and obviously everybody's been to the fuel pumps and they know that that's risen.
Thanks for that, Michelle. That was really
Uh,
informative. I had to like that.
Oh, so the weather stations are really increasing our,
Yeah, the software and the AT&T, sorry, it's late, I'm tangled, the service that we need, yeah, to
Why do we
Access.
have the weather station?
oh,
Why do we have it?
we have it, so that, it's a pretty cool system. Jim is able to, the cameras point down into the pavement, and he can tell the temperature underneath, when it's gonna freeze over. If you're really interested, you should go and have him show you, he's in love with it, and he said it actually keeps him up at night because he's looking at all the information that it gives you, but it really helps create a historical data that shows him, like when the road temperature is this, and these are the conditions, we need to go out and do solid. It's gonna really help with, reducing
I
materials.
mean, the idea is that it's
Cool.
gonna ultimately pay for itself
Right.
with, trying to get a just finer analysis.
Reducing materials and reducing overtime and.
And it does
And
do
also
this,
doing a better job of keeping the roads safe, like, how about that?
and not only this, but ultimately, I would think liability wise for the town, the fact that we are actually employing the technology to
Yeah.
monitor our roads, it'd be very hard for somebody saying, oh, those guys in Monterey, they don't pay attention. I crashed my car, and,
Honestly,
always
ours
good.
are better than most of the
Yeah.
adjacent towns to do
This
that
is the
thing.
same software that Mass DOT uses
Yeah.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, thank you for that explanation, that's really helpful.
And they'll be able to do reports, these reports.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to.
Yeah, it has a lot of capability. We haven't learned it all yet, but.
As with a lot of good high-tech systems, that's usually true.
So, okay. And then here's the
That's just your capital plan. If you
capital plan,
Yeah.
which is always fun. Get to watch the finished basement still here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are items that you need to talk about,
Right.
that aren't on here.
Well, since and there were some things that we raised and appropriated for that haven't been spent yet. That are, I mean, no, like the cruiser was,
It's being paid this week.
what?
It's being paid this week.
Is being paid this week?
I haven't seen it. The new cruiser is out in the back park. It's in the last spot. It's pretty
Is it
sharp.
there?
Can't see
Nobody
it.
let me know?
It
It's really stealthy.
is stealthy.
It's a stealth cruiser.
No, it is. The lettering on it, you can only see it like when the light shines on it.
Yeah,
That's
all
pretty
these
cool.
towns are doing that, so they can sneak up on you.
It's snazzy. So the finance committee will be meeting next Tuesday to do this preliminary like you just did, and then, Michelle and I and them are gonna try to come up with a schedule. I'd like the accountant to be present for some of the joint meetings, because I understand there are some questions that have been raised. I want them to be able to
I think
answer.
it's a very good idea.
Yes, so we just need to talk about what kind of schedule the finance committee is looking at, and I need to make sure that their availability works with that, but I would imagine we'll start the joint meetings a little week later than we thought, so probably in the beginning of February.
So will we go to them on Tuesdays?
It sounds like that's what Michelle wanted to do, was invite you guys to them. But it wouldn't be till February.
And she's only doing virtual, but
She is. But I'll be able to share the screen so everybody can see.
we took it here,
You
do
guys?
virtual with them.
You could also ask, how many people are we talking about?
It'd be 6 total.
This is a big room. You could ask say, for this level of complexity and problems we've had with tech, perhaps for these one set of joint meetings, would it make sense to have an in-person meeting, at least for the members of the two boards?
Well, I would see that if they're comfortable with it.
Yeah, would be worth asking, they can always say
Right, you
no.
always say no. I mean, this room is big enough to have, well, it's not really 6 people, but, would never be that far to sit on opposite corners of the room. So it's good to look somebody in the eye when you're talking to somebody, right? So,
Well, if we need bigger, we could always go to the library. That room's a little bigger and not so much junk on the sides.
that'd be fine with me. If Vicky will let me in the library.
I'll mention it to Michelle.
I can't open the front door. I can only go to the basement. Sorry. I'd love you to come, but
Okay. All right, well, I'll get somebody else. I'll let you there. All right, well, find out if they're amenable to it. If not, I work better outside my kitchen, basically. I remember when we tried to do this budget in 2020, we were all remote and it was ridiculous. All right, so review mail to be sent or signed. Okay, so we received a letter from Kim Weatherall, who was a past employee, and she preferred that we don't mention her name, which I just mentioned.
No, she said when my name is mentioned.
Okay.
I agree with her, and she would like her name removed from public documents. That I don't believe we could do. She'd like a public apology from the Board of Selectmen. All I can say is, I'm sorry if there's any of this discussion caused her any stress. Hopefully that's acceptable. We'll have other selectmen if they want to say something separately. Anyway, all right, we're going to move on. I have a letter here from Eileen Marcus. Dear Melissa, professor on the select board, it's been an honor and privilege to serve Monterey on the Council of Aging for the past 4 years. At this time, I must resign. We look forward to working again with all of you in the future. Best Eileen. We thank her for her service to the town of Monterey, and hopefully she'll come back. Next one is Michelle Miller, email dated the 11th of January. To may concern, as has been Silver's usual practice, is misstatements and misrepresentations of the fact, created an alternative reality. He adamantly refuses to take the minutes. Task all members have shared with him, and he has decided to boycott the finance committee in order to maintain this fiction that there's a problem. Be assured that Silver is free to record the meetings, as all attendings are entitled to do. Since any meetings posted the YouTube channel are public record, this is a moot point. Whether I have or have not been to the channel is irrelevant. Silver contradicts himself repeatedly and ad nauseam. If he were truly interested about functional government, he would attend the meetings as a productive member, but instead has chosen to make everyone's work more difficult. Sad, respectfully, Michelle Miller, still chair of the Finance Committee. So I would hope, I don't know, I would hope everybody grows up, but I guess that's not gonna happen. So 5D is the public records response from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Chairman Noah received a petition of John Silbert appealing the response of the town of Monterey to request the public records on GL 6610A. See also 950 CMR 32.08.1. On December 13th, 2021, Ms. Silver requested all communications, including text and emails, between named individuals in parentheses since October 31st of 2021. On December 28th, 2021, the town responded. Unsatisfied with the town's response, Mr. Silver petitioned this office, and this appeal, SPR 21-3364, was open as a result. Subsequently, I've learned that the town responded to Mr. Silver's request for the response dated January 3rd, 2022, where the basis of this appeal was open as a result of the town's December 28th response. I will now consider this administrative appeal closed. Ms. Silver may appeal the substantive nature of the town's response within 90 days. See 950 CMR 32.8. I, signed Rebecca Murray, Supervisor of Records. You want to see it? Absolutely. I'm going to use it as a coaster. All right, and then there's an email, John Silver, dated 1/13. Is this the? All right. I'll read this email. Dear Select Board, it has come to my attention that the chair of the Finance Committee, one member of the Select Board, and the TA have been conducting budget meetings with departments outside of public meeting. As I wrote in my email on the fall, the budget process is planned out in joint meetings with the Select Board and the Finance Committee. There have been no planning meetings, no published budget schedule. The Finance Committee has never met to determine how the budget process will be conducted, and yet now budget meetings are being conducted outside public meeting without any procedural vote of the Finance Committee, nor perhaps of the Select Board. How has it happened that the budget meetings are being conducted in this way without transparency outside of public meeting by self-appointed individuals from each board? Who made the decision to proceed with budget preparations in this manner? A manner in which deprives the public and the taxpayer of their right to witness and inform themselves of how their tax dollars are going to be spent. All budget meetings should be conducted in publicly posted meetings with appropriate detailed agendas with detailed minutes following such meetings. You are doing a tremendous disservice to the public we serve by denying them the right to transparency in government. This is particularly egregious considering the millions of taxpayer dollars under consideration. Sincerely, John, signed John Silver, Finance Committee, Monterey. I have an answer to this. Yes, Nikki?
I've been to a number of these budget meetings over the years, you know, for the library, and that's how it was. Somebody from the finance, somebody from, well, we just, and what, yeah, I don't understand. And it's never been an open meeting
So this has been going on for, right, so you're right, Nikki, this has been going on for
for
5
years.
years, maybe?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
one of the, actually, it's one of the most helpful things for, we call it, this is not the budget discussion.
Yeah,
This is
just to sit down and get the,
This is an informational
yeah,
round for, just to get the conversation going. It is not meant not to be transparent. And especially when you have a new member of the select board, who is, it is possibly one of the most informative things you can possibly do, because you get to have an understanding of what people in departments, how they approach their budget, how the finance committee approaches the budget, how the select board approaches the budget, and you get to hear from people in an informal setting about about what they do. It was never intended to be something that's done in the shadows. That's why it's always been a member of the finance committee, member of the select board, the
Melissa
individual.
pulling it out of
the
her
town
computer
administrator.
and one or two people from the board.
Not only that, but, this email sounds like John just discovered this. Well, John's been a part of it for the past 5 years. So, and I can tell you that I didn't get an email like that last year, or the year before.
Is there
So
any rule or reg that, I mean, these meetings make complete sense to me.
What?
Is there actually any rule or reg that they violate? I'm not aware of it, but that doesn't mean there isn't.
there's no quorum, no boards, nothing is being decided. It is strictly a rap session. You know, it is, let me hear informally from the police.
That's what I understand.
Chief.
And in most towns, the town administrator does this by themselves, but we think it's helpful to have a finance committee member and a select board member there as well.
Sometimes it
And
doesn't
then the
make a
town
difference.
administrator presents the budget to both
So-
meetings. So I included a copy of the memo from last year where John actually signed off on this process.
Sure, she's about it for every year, but surprise, this is happening this year.
No, now, with the new open meeting laws, they're new this year.
Right.
Got signed last week.
The more information that the more information that select board and finance committee members get, the better money is spent. It's an advantage to taxpayers, not a disadvantage. And this entire discussion that we're having, we're gonna be having again in a public session. But at least we'll have some basic understanding of what we're talking about. We won't be talking about it for the first time. So this makes government more efficient, not less efficient. So this is cuckoo bananas. Do you want to chime in since you're implicated in this conspiracy theory?
Well, I would say my understanding of the open meeting law is that it's not at all required to post the meetings, but I don't think it would be a bad thing to do if someone was interested in when, Steve Moore was asking about fire company, and he's still on the call. He was asking about, or let's just say any member of the public is asking about a department request, then the person would be right there to answer those questions. So I could see next year, obviously it will be new, probably, different people may be involved in the process, but I would think it may be helpful to post that way the meetings, that way if someone's, I know that people will be brought back in for further questions, but I think it could be helpful to post meetings if people wanted to stay up to date.
Sometimes, and this has started when I was on the board, and we discovered that sometimes it was a lot helpful if a department head could talk kind of off the cuff, like unofficially.
Right.
And it is, and I understand, look, everything should be in front of the public if it can be, but sometimes it helps if the department head wants to throw something at you. Well, hey, what if I do this? What if we do this? 'Cause, I was thinking about doing this, but I don't have to do it if it's gonna be too expensive. And sometimes they feel better to talk about it when they're just talking to one member of the select board, one member of the finance committee, and the town administrator, where there's no public, so there's nobody that's kind of judging their first blush at it. Now, they're still gonna have to sit, again, in front of the select board and the finance committee and discuss exactly what their proposals are. But sometimes informally, it eases into the conversation. When you start talking about somebody's budget and their, and what they're spending, it's, sometimes it becomes a very, hard to explain matter. But I understand where you're coming from, Justin. But I think you'll see that look at the mannerism when somebody, you've had an informal discussion, and then when they come from the select board and finance committee, they're gonna be a little bit of a different person. And sometimes you're gonna realize, I think, that, boy, I'm glad I had that discussion with them, kind of an off the cuff discussion before I actually had them sitting in this, in front of this panel.
It's like a rehearsal.
Almost, because a lot of people, a lot of departments, they kind of throw out ideas, or they feel that, but they don't want to throw them out in front of the two boards and the public. But every once in a while they'll throw something out like, boy, I was thinking, like, do you think I can get this, or do you think we can do this? I'd rather just have this kind of off the cuff discussion. And what was happening a lot was, before we did this kind of officially, was they were grabbing individual members anyway of the select board or the finance committee and talking to them. That was even worse, because that was even less transparent, because what happened is, like, we'd sit and have a meeting, and Ken would be here, and he'd say, well, I spoke to the chief, and the chief wants to do this. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm using that as an example. But people would get pulled aside, where somebody from the finance committee would say, no, I already had a discussion with the highway guy, and this is what he feels. So this at least regiments it, and at least you have one member of each, so that you can't just say, well, so-and-so said this, like, at least you have some kind of verification. It's not a bad, I can see where it might be, if somebody really wanted to talk about transparency. But ultimately, I think it worked for the town. You'll only know when you're in the middle of it. So, but the complaint about it is when you know all about it.
Given that he was instrumental in setting up that system, it's a bit rich, frankly.
I mean, he just didn't roll
I
into
mean,
town.
I'm just gonna call it a secret.
Okay. Discussion of strategies to reach 100% broadband accessibility. Dustin, you have?
So thought that it would be best to ask before I reach out, if I can reach out to Spectrum Charter, because it's my understanding that most of the homes that are not accessible, don't have access to broadband, probably the most cost-effective way and common sense way to get access to broadband would be from Spectrum Charter, either from New Marlboro or Camden. But could I seek permission to go and consult, and not obviously negotiate anything, but just see what's up? And then maybe come back to the board if.
I have no problem with that. I've tried to speak to them twice, a long time ago, and they're not very responsive, but maybe you'll have better luck than I will. Yeah, sure. You have my to give it a whirl. Keep in mind that when a cable company comes into town, especially a cable company providing television services, there's an added layer of legalese, because there's a subscription agreement that is something that when we looked at Spectrum Cable, there's a license. There's more licensing agreements when it comes to Spectrum Cable as opposed to Firework, because Firework only provides internet and phone. But as soon as you start offering television, there's this licensing agreement that is like yay thick. So that's always been the challenge, because even when I had this brief discussion with them about, like, why not just come in and also like serve the first 3 people in Monterey, so that's where they're at. They were like, well, just tell us that we could do that. And I'm like, well, is there a licensing agreement? What are the does the town have to give you permission? We have to accept a licensing agreement, because anyway.
So one thing I would look into,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible, but I'm aware of the additional difficulties with television. I don't know if it's possible, but I would ask, could the broadband internet be separated out? And it's my understanding that that might make that process easier if there's not cable television being offered. I don't know.
So yeah, go for
Because,
it.
yeah, that is difficult.
Go for it. They're not, they haven't been, they're hard, they don't get back to you. But, yeah, sure, absolutely, please do. So listen, number 7, the executive session minutes. We just heard that, so I did receive, I did receive one kind of pass, of one of the executive session things, but you understand that that you just found out today, and I was afraid that this was part of it, is that if there's anything that's still ongoing of those discussions,
Yeah.
you can't disseminate to the public.
Okay.
So until everything is done, so.
Yeah, I
know
understand.
it's mixed.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out how the approval and dissemination process works. But given that we did get a request for our minutes, I drafted an email response that I wanted to run by you.
Okay, so before you tell me this, can I read you my response to that individual? Because it may cover your response.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Because, and one interesting thing to note for all the public that's still here is, an open meeting law request, you have to respond within 10 calendar days rather than 10 business days. And our 10 calendar days are up soon.
Right. So, however, gentleman by the name of John Silbert, would like, minutes of certain executive sessions that have taken place here in town hall. We contacted council, and they said that you can't. So the open meeting law provision is my understanding. Well, anyway, I'll read you the response, and then which I received approval from the board in the last meeting. Mr. Silbert, the select board has authorized me in public session of January 12th, 2022, to inform you that on advice of council and in accordance with our understanding of the open meeting law statute, minutes involving active or open investigations will not be disseminated to the public until the conclusion of the investigation. Be assured that following the conclusion of the investigation, all sequestered minutes will be immediately released. Thank you, Stephen Wise, Chair, Monterey Select Board. So the idea is that if you have a pending, I should have also added pending litigation, but it's still an investigation. If you have pending litigation, you just can't. So it's not specific to that one particular date. It happens to involve a lot of other executive session that we had, because I think all of our executive sessions had to do with one thing or another. So, and then
They did all deal with one thing.
yeah. So, well, that's what happens when you're a one-trick pony. So that as soon as it's over, everything's over, we will. So if you want to start drafting them, go ahead. But we can't let them out.
Yeah, and 7, the only other ones was 7/21, I don't know.
That's the one that includes the lawsuit.
Yeah.
We can't do that. One's still open.
Okay.
I just found out today.
So, but you already responded, you already made the response that we talked about.
Well, this response should, you notice I didn't use a specific date of the executive session minutes, because this is in response to all of them. It's the same thing.
Okay, but you made the response, so. we
Yeah,
are done
this
for
has
now.
been sent.
Okay. There's no ticking.
Sure, absolutely. I'm surprised that he hasn't answered from. Yeah, no, I'm sure he might have answered now while we're in session. Yeah. All right, any questions or comments from the public? Vicky, meeting of life?
Yeah, thank you guys for all of the insane amount of work that the budget process requires, and I think that the hours you put in those meetings matter. They matter to the people you're meeting with, and they matter to the quality of the final product. So I just wanna let you guys know that I appreciate the amount of work involved and the hard work and thought that goes into it. And I only hope that the conversations that evolve from it actually end up, sometimes it's difficult, but ideas can get changed and evolve, and they can end up better for the conversation. So I hope that the continued conversations make you guys feel like your work was also worthwhile, even if what ends up happening is different than your first idea.
And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Happens a lot, that's part of the process, it's a process.
Yeah.
We don't have to put our own dictators here,
No.
you know, it's a process. You know, you try to do the best you can, sometimes you get it right.
And ideas evolve. Sometimes other people have ideas you hadn't considered, and it alters what you came up with, and everybody's happy. Like, I know that happens to me all the time.
Exactly.
I never thought of that, I never
Exactly.
looked at it that way.
Sometimes you wanna hit your head against the wall for not having thought of it. But,
Yeah, why wasn't that my idea?
so I just wanted you guys to know I appreciate, and that goes for all of you, all the hard work you're putting in, and how difficult the process is, but you make it look almost easy. Okay, maybe not.
I don't know. Great, so I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yes. Yes.